school committee meeting to order. And I would ask anyone who cares to join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everybody. So tonight, first up on our agenda, we're going to hear an update on our recent graffiti incident and investigation from Dr. Kenworthy. But first, I just wanted to go ahead and say, to the community and that the school committee, we acknowledge the very serious nature of this graffiti incident and the impact that it's had on the community, the school community, and the greater community. We all want to feel safe in our schools and in our neighborhoods, to know that we belong here and to trust that our neighbors will support us. I know that we have neighbors who have not felt that way because of these recent incidents, and just wanted you all to know that we support you. We hear you, we are understanding as best we can, and we're doing everything we can to handle this situation and also to ensure that things like this do not happen in our school community and in our neighborhoods. So tonight we do have time here on our agenda after Dr. Kenworthy gives an update on what we've been doing here in the schools to deal with this incident. We have opened it up to public comment, so anyone who wants to speak, we are here to listen tonight. We do have a sign-up sheet. If you haven't signed up, feel free to come up at any time and put your name. We will give full time to anyone who wants to speak. We're just here to listen, and if there's anything else that we can do based on what you hear about our investigation and our other activities tonight, we welcome those comments because we do want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make everyone feel safe and supported during this time. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Kenworthy for our update.
Thank you, Ms. Powell, and thank you to everyone who is here with us tonight. Seeing our families and community members here shows us how much East Greenwich cares about our schools and our students. I know the recent graffiti incidents have caused concern, frustration, and for many of us hurt. As I have shared, I am not only the superintendent of this district, but I am also a longtime community member and a parent of students in the district. Please know that we take these incidents very seriously, not just as acts of vandalism, but because of the impact they have on our students, families, and the sense of safety and belonging in our schools. We have heard from many of you over the past few weeks, and your voices are being heard and are helping us as we move forward. Last week, our school committee accepted my recommendation to hire an independent outside investigator to strengthen our review and our district's response. That work is currently underway. The work is focused on supporting our ongoing investigative efforts and on identifying any broader patterns, gaps, or areas where we must improve. We are also continuing to work closely with local law enforcement. And this moment also calls for us to come together as a community. This evening, I am announcing that 2 weeks from tonight, on April 14th, right here at Cole Middle School at 6 p.m. again, we will be hosting a district-wide community event. This event will bring together district leadership, mental health professionals, and community partners to provide information and resources around challenging topics where we can listen, learn, and support our families. Please be on the lookout for more details over the next few weeks, but again, that event will be held on Tuesday, August 14th at 6 p.m. right here at Cole Middle School. And as we move forward into tonight's meeting, please know that we are committed to doing this work right for our students and for this community. Thank you. What did I say? I'm sorry, April 14th.
Thank you, Dr. Kenworthy. So,
I was thinking ahead to something.
I know. So at this time, we do have time on our agenda specifically if anyone would like to come up and speak about these incidents, about their impact, about anything you wish we had done, that you would like to see us do, comments, concerns, or anything. So I will ask, Ms. Healy, do we have anyone signed up to come up and give public comment? So nobody has signed up for that particular topic, but I would ask if anyone is here, if you would like to come up to the podium. There is, but right now there isn't anyone on it, so if you'd like to come and speak, we just ask that you state your name and your address for the record.
Okay. My name is Andrew Scholes. I live at 653 Love Lane in Warwick, but I'm here today as a member of the Board of Trustees of Temple Torah Yisrael. We're the only synagogue in East Greenwich. And Temple Torah Yisrael condemns the violence and voices its outrage at the anti-Semitism that has occurred and has been allowed to occur in the East Greenwich public school system. The events of the past 3 weeks have only exposed a more endemic problem that has not been addressed by the East Greenwich School Administration. In conversations with parents of Jewish children who attend East Greenwich Public Schools, many Jewish children have been the target of anti-Semitism, not only these past few weeks, but the past few years. Many complaints from parents of Jewish children about anti-Semitism that their children have experienced in the East Greenwich Public Schools have remained unanswered. There has been no response from the school administration until the recent incidents. And maybe that's because of the publicity that's been surrounding it. But now we have your attention. We commend the school administration that have finally recognized that there is anti-Semitism in the school system. Our schools are meant to be sanctuaries of learning, curiosity, and growth. They should be places where every child, regardless of their religion, background, or identity, feels safe, respected, and valued. For Jewish students and their families, this incident is especially painful. Anti-Semitism symbols and language are not abstract or harmless. They carry with them centuries of persecution, violence, and trauma. When such imagery appears on the walls of a school, it sends a chilling message that the Jewish students are not welcome. We must not allow that message to stand. When anti-Semitic words or symbols appear in a place of learning, we have to ask ourselves difficult questions, not just who did this, but what makes this possible? What ideas, what silences, what gaps in understanding allowed hatred to take root in the mind of someone young enough to be in an elementary school, a middle school, or even a high school? From what outside sources are children learning hate? Is it from social media? Is it from 764? Is it from their peers, someone they look up to? That's for more investigation to be done. For many Jewish families, these incidents do not exist in isolation. It raises the basic question, are our children safe in attending East Greenwich Public Schools? The answer is yes, because we will make it so, not through words alone, but through visible and sustained commitment. The broader community has come together and made unmistakably clear that all forms of anti-Semitism and all forms of hate will not be tolerated in East Greenwich. We hope that your investigation will determine how widespread anti-Semitism is in the East Greenwich Public Schools. We need the school administration to be transparent in the process and keep the community updated. We need the school administration to collaborate with parents, educators, and outside organizations, such as the Sandra Bornstein Holocaust Educational Center, and to draft and implement an action plan to educate students in order to stop anti-Semitism in the schools. We need educators to be trained how to react and respond to anti-Semitic acts. The community, and especially the Jewish community, will not let the school administration response fade away like last week's news. The issues will not go away unless there is action, education, and continuing education, now and in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I do hope that the update we provided tonight about our independent investigation does give you some comfort that we are taking this very seriously. It is not fading away. We are looking at this in depth. We are planning for educational focus into the future. And I agree, and I think the school committee would also agree, with everything that you said. Our schools are a place of learning, and they are sanctuaries where everyone deserves to feel safe, and that is the only thing that is acceptable to everybody at this table, and we will continue working until we ensure that that is in fact true for all of our students. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Seth Fetter. I live at 59 Larch Road, East Greenwich. I just have a basic question. How well has the investigation gone, and what is known so far about the people who committed this crime?
We're just conferring to make sure we answer as appropriate for an ongoing investigation with which we are coordinating the police, but we will.
Yeah, so I will try. Aubrey Lombardo, I'm the attorney for the district. I will try to answer this to the best of my knowledge at this point. So there are two separate investigations. One is the police investigation, which looks at this through a criminal lens. We obviously don't have an update on that on the school side. Then there is the separate school district investigation, which we, are compelled to do separately, and there's a different set of standards pursuant to federal and state law and our own school committee policies. Up until the appointment of the outside investigator, the schools had each been conducting their own investigations. After conferring with the various building administrators, we thought that it made sense to bring someone in to help coordinate those investigations because they are separate incidents, and then there was an incident 3 weeks before. And so trying to find any common links or patterns, and then also trying to address any systemic issues. So at this point, each building has conducted at least a partial investigation on their own. They have met with, and the superintendent has spoken with, the outside investigator who is working on coordinating those efforts. And we will try to keep you apprised the best that we can as this goes on, keeping in mind that there are some student confidentiality issues pursuant to FERPA that we would not be able to share, but we will try to be as transparent as possible and anticipate that at the conclusion of this, there will be a report with recommendations and an action plan for the superintendent and the district.
Thank you. I was wondering, I think one of the things that I think is frustrating to parents often is the lack of follow-up and report out. And I know that's been frustrating to me in the past, and understanding it now the way that I do, and understanding the laws that protect our students, and also how those laws do fit in with our kind of educational philosophy and our town philosophy, that we do protect students, even students who make choices that we disagree with, or that we want them to learn something else and make a different choice next time. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about, so when an incident happens, we get a sort of vague report about what happened, and then we get a sort of vague report, sometimes a little bit more detail on what's happening, as the investigation, and then sometimes very little detail after that. As opposed to when there's an adult crime in the world, when it's somebody robbed a store, we're looking for the guy, we think it's this guy, that kind of thing. Could you maybe just talk a little bit about what we should expect and the reasons that we should expect, the amount that we should expect? Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry. No, okay.
Sure. So all student information, any personally identifiable information and student records are protected under the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act of 1972, which is a federal law. That's the reason why we can't say it was Aubrey Lombardo who did X. If you are a student in school, even if you are over the age of 18, it's not the same as a criminal investigation where potentially a name could be published or something could be attributed to a particular person. We are required to comply with FERPA. And I understand that that can be frustrating in all different kinds of contexts for families because they want information. I think with an investigation like this, where you will have a written report from the outside investigator, I think it will be clear exactly what happened and what is being alleged. There will be, a follow-up, but will there be disclosure as to, who the person who did this was? It depends. If it was an adult who is an employee or a community member, perhaps. If it's a student, then that would be protected under FERPA, and we would not be allowed legally under federal law to disclose that name. So it's not a matter of the district not trying to be transparent. We just really are not allowed to release that information. Typically, what we would say is this, the person has been disciplined in accordance with state and federal law and district policy. One of the reasons why we say that is, and one of the reasons why sometimes discipline looks different for different students, is because different students have different protections under the law. So if it is a student who has an IEP or a 504, there are certain standards that we need to adhere to with respect to discipline that we do not for other students, and that might make what discipline looks like a little bit different for those students as opposed to other students. I think what you will see, or what I would anticipate that you would see in a report, again, depending on, if we're able to identify who this person or persons is, and whether or not they are a student in school, there may not be a name, but there would be, this is what we have done, here is how we are making students safe, this is the follow-up plan, in the report. I'm happy to answer any more specific questions, but those are the general parameters. And I understand even when we have Title IX investigations that we've been through this enough times in different districts and in East Greenwich where I know that people get very upset because they want more information. And I think, frankly, there's some general frustration even from school committee and administration at times that we can't share more information, but we are bound by federal law and guidelines around personally protected information.
So Aubrey, for example, because there's a parallel police investigation, it is possible that information could be made public from that investigation that we would not make public, but that does not necessarily mean that we have different roles, right?
We have different standards. So the police have their privacy requirements with respect to minors that they have to adhere to. We have our own, again, and it's primarily FERPA. And that's not necessarily just a name, it's any personally identifiable information. So for example, when we release a report, we can't necessarily say it was a student who's in cluster B at the high school. Anything that may narrow it down so that the community would really be able to identify who it is, that is illegal, and we should not be sharing that kind of information. Where you'd be able to pinpoint personally identifiable information on a particular student. And the police do have an entirely different standard than we do, and a different set of goals, frankly, that they are required to adhere to as opposed to what we as a school district are required to adhere to.
Can you tell us at this time whether students were involved?
We do not know at this time whether students were involved, and that's the subject of the ongoing investigation.
Does anyone else have any questions on this particular line of questioning, or would anyone else like to make a comment at the podium about this issue? Do we know if there's anyone online who would like to make a comment? No? Okay. Well, I thank you all very much for all of your engagement over these past weeks as we've worked through this. I ask for your collaboration and your patience as we continue throughout our investigation. I hope that we see many of you at our public forum when we have it in 2 weeks. Not in August. In 2 weeks. And I do encourage anyone, maybe you couldn't come here tonight to speak, But if anyone else in the community would like to reach out to us with any further comments or questions, we will do our very best to answer them. Oh, we have someone coming up. Okay, hi.
Hi, Jeffrey Salt, 20 Rabbit Run, East Greenwich, resident of East Greenwich for 37 years. We have 2 children who graduated a while ago from the East Greenwich school system. I understand if there are minors involved in the privacy laws. However, the question I have is the consultant going to give us a go forward in terms of education, and what will that look like, and when will we see a preliminary report from the outside consultant, and what the district is going to do in teaching Holocaust to our students?
So I
Thank
know
you.
that is part of what the outside investigator has been tasked with, is to look at curriculum, to look at what kind of education is happening, and to suggest systemic recommendations with respect to potentially curriculum and other educational opportunities. As far as a timeline goes, some of that is contingent upon the cooperation, with the police and with the various schools. I anticipate that we would have something, I hope, at least in terms of the recommendations by the end of the school year, maybe sooner than that. A lot of it is just contingent upon the information and the amount of people that the outside investigator needs to speak with, and how much the principals have done internally already.
Would it be realistic to expect education to be part of next year's curriculum?
I leave that one to you, Tom.
Yeah, I would think absolutely. And this school year, I know our principals are engaging with outside resources right now, like the Rhode Island Jewish Alliance and the Sandra Bornstein Holocaust Education Center. So they stepped right up to offer their help, and we have engaged with them. So in addition to, I do believe there are things already happening in our schools, so I don't want to discount that fact either, but I think we will have our efforts enhanced, definitely.
I'd like to thank the school committee and the town council for not letting this spiral out of control like it did in North Smithfield.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a comment? So I know sometimes it's difficult to get up and speak at the podium. So again, I just want to thank everybody for their time. And to say again that if anyone does feel that they want to reach out to us with a comment, a question, or any other insight, to please feel free to reach out to anyone at this table, to Dr. Kenworthy, to anyone on the school committee, to all of us. We are happy to hear anything anybody has to say. We want to make sure that we deal with this in the best way possible, not just as an incident, but as a learning opportunity and a place for growth for the entire community. So thank you again. I very much appreciate everybody's efforts across the community. Everyone here in this room, all of our administrators and teachers, Town Manager Noda, everyone who has risen to the occasion. So thank you all again. So with that, we will move on to the next item on our agenda, which is an update on the Town of East Greenwich finances from our town manager, Andy Noda.
Thank you. And
Great,
before Andy starts, I just want to thank him for coming tonight. So as I've mentioned at any of our budget workshops, Mr. Nada and I have been in communication on the overall budget process. He's fully aware of what our budget has looked like so far and continues to look like from the town appropriation end of things, in that we do feel the need to ask for the full 4% from the town. So he offered to just come and give his kind of perspective on how that may move forward and other factors that are affecting the town budget this year. So thank you, Andy.
Great. Thanks, Tom. As noted by the superintendent, we've I think, struck a relationship, and we understand first full budget cycle for the superintendent, that these additional meetings are critically important. So I appreciate the school committee, Chair Powell, and the superintendent for the opportunity to come and just hit a couple of items at a very high level, not to really drill into issues. I, of course, monitor and communicate with the superintendent on your budget process and the steps that you've taken and some of the challenges that are very known to myself and the town council. So tonight, I put together just a couple of subjects that I wanted to touch upon. So the first one, in watching your last budget meeting, I know that there were a number of questions regarding really what is a significant rate hike in healthcare rates, right, of staggering amount. So as the chairman of the board of the Rhode Island Interlocal Risk Management Trust, I have knowledge and resources there that can provide some of that information. I did want to note for the committee, because those that are not connected with it really don't probably understand the makeup of the board. We have 144 separate members, 36 towns out of 39, 34 school districts, which makes up almost the whole state as well for districts, and 64 special purpose districts. Our board of trustees and all of the committees of the trust are made up of a compilation of high-level school personnel and administrators, municipal personnel, as well as, when I say special purpose district, it could be an individual wastewater or water plant, could be a fire district and other entity. Our library in town is actually a special purpose district who's a member of the trust. So makes up really quite a compilation on a statewide basis. So what I wanted to note is that I think historically we've been accustomed to anywhere from a 3 to 8% increase, give or take, on health and dental. And this year, as was noted by Maggie at the prior meeting, the district was faced with a 16% plus. The average for all trust members was about 14.4%. That's a major number. The town was at about 11.5%. But something that the board did just recently, one of the major issues that I think Maggie's going to touch on a little bit later in tonight's meeting, is the impact of the GLP-1 weight loss drugs, which has really dramatically affected all of the rates for all members. So the board, in the last few weeks, unanimously agreed to enable each member the ability to forego that benefit and lose that coverage. And that means something, and we don't have to get into it tonight, but something different for each person who's taking that drug. But what that really means is it's not for those drugs that are targeting diabetes, like Ozempic or Mounjaro. It's really for just those drugs which are purely weight loss driven, like Wegovy or Zepbound. So that's the focus. And an example for the town, which the trust just provided me, our rate proposed is about 11.57%. If we were to forgo that benefit for a handful of members, our rate would drop to 8.84%. So 2 to 3% reduction. I think that something similar you may see from the school as well on the 16% number that you're looking at. So there is an opportunity for some structured relief, minimal relief, and I think you'll have that ability to change that plan on an annual basis going forward. The other thing that was noted at the last meeting was about the pooling effect of the trust. And what I would say, as a self-insured pool with the majority of municipal members, what it does is it allows us a seat at the table to make decisions on critically important benefits for the organization and our employees directly, as long as we're willing to pay for them, right? So there are other rate credits that we set benchmarks for. So we are anticipating a rate reduction because I'm anticipating a board approval for our dental rates, which we should see a reduction. That number is up about 10.5%, and we should see a reduction with an equity credit, a dental equity distinction, which they call it, down to about 7%. So we should see a little bit more relief there, and relief for the town and school that puts those funds right back in our budget for redistribution into other priority areas. But there is a full-blown scaled approach where, and not everybody reacts well to this, although as a member of the pool, you have to understand that you're not always going to have great experience in the pool. So you know you're going to have great years and you're going to have bad years. So you basically buy into the fact that if you're having a really bad year, those who are doing well are going to take a couple percentage points off of your potential rate, and when you're doing poorly, others are going to help you. So we're all in it together, and I think we make decisions that way at the trust. And I hope that little bit of softening opportunity in the coming weeks will provide a little bit of relief where it's needed, both in the school budget and in the town budget. Second item I wanted to mention was about, I'll call it budget limits. As we all know, and we talk about it ad nauseum each year, and every budget cycle is challenging. I've never been through one that's not. The challenge is just appear in different form. So as we all know, there's a tax levy of 4%, and there are very specific exceptions to that levy, although the district can only request of the council a maximum of a 4%. And the challenge that we're having this past year, the year that we're in, our levy increase was 5.42% as budgeted. It may differ just slightly by year end once it's audited. But this year, based on the draft proposals that we have, and as noted by the superintendent with the request by the district for 4%, we had spoken earlier in the process, and I had originally mentioned to the superintendent that we were holding about 3.5%, right? Which, in a normal year, that's a good number, and generally to at least start working from. But I would say, based on the conversations that the superintendent and I have had, based on the challenges as articulated in these budget sessions, my obligation to the council is to deliver a budget based on the whole community, inclusive of the school committee's proposed budget, on or before May 1st. So I really don't see, based on the second year in a row of state aid loss, I don't see an alternative for us other than recommending a 4% for the school. So I know that that's a number that the committee and administration have been working with. I think there's probably, as we all know, there'll be more discussion in May before the council as we get through that process. We can only hope for a positive shift. Each year, the last few years, we've seen some late modifications to the formula where there has been some additional funding. So hopefully there may be some relief, and we can only work towards that. As we get through the budget process, most likely waiting until June. So it's very, very late in the process after the committee has submitted their budget, and it's been heard by the council. So where we are on the town side is we go through the same exact process that you're going through. So in recent weeks, we received our final program from all of our departments. We've done a very similar exercise to what the school goes through. We originally were looking at budget requests by individual departments in their operating program of just under $2.5 million, which is a big ask. The initial, we go through phases, as you're doing here tonight. We go through phases. The initial phase, we cut just over $1 million of that, which started to bring it more into reality and to the possibility of funding. Since then, we've reduced it by another $308,000. And the reason why I mentioned the 5.42% in this year for tax levy increase is we are now in a range of 6.1 to about 6.86%. That's the range that our levy is floating right now. So legitimately so, because the driver of that is debt service, which is an exception, right, to the levy, state law. So we're within reason. That will get approved if it falls anywhere above 4% based on the levy's overall debt service impact on the levy. Although what I'm tasked with, besides those reductions and besides some really hard decisions that the committee is facing this evening and in the coming weeks as you finalize your budget proposal, is we need to reduce to get to the 6.1, which is a challenging number but more tenable than almost 7%. We need to reduce on the town side another $508,000 in addition to the 1.3 that's already been reduced. So we're working. I have a little additional flexibility than you may have, because that can take the form of increased revenue, potential aid, expenditure reductions. I think at this point in the process, you're probably more focused on expenditure reductions on the school side. So we have a little bit more of an opportunity to try to get our arms around that 6.1 to almost 6.9% increase by trying to tackle that $508,000 that remains. So in working through that process, I think, overall, if we're able to get to the 6.1, we're looking at an overall general fund increase of about a $2.7 million budget increase, which is significant. The debt service impact that I'd like to just hit on high level at this point, I think as challenging as that conversation has been for all of us, kind of cloaked with excitement for the school construction initiative, which I think we know is a priority and needed to occur. That debt service we knew would scale on. So some has affected us this year, which pushed us up over the 4% to 5.42. This next year, we're going to be increasing that debt obligation or tax need for debt obligation from about 4.2 to 4.3 million up to over 6 million just this year. And we've only issued the first tranche of debt for the school, about $71 million. So that increase that affects both the school and the town's operating program is just under 1.8 million. So that's the driver. I went into a formula as provided by my finance director, Trish Sundel, and I pulled that number out. I said, you know what? Many years were stable. Let's say we didn't have that effect. Our levy drops to about 3.5%, which probably would be acceptable in any other year other than when we're starting to incur this debt impact. So that 1.7 is significant. Now, what happens beyond that, and I won't belabor this because we have another year to work on it, is next year. Next year is actually the big year, and as anybody who's been following the school construction initiative knows that we don't receive our reimbursement in aid, the 55% reimbursement we all talk about, until the project is substantially complete. And that won't occur until 28, FY 28. Won't happen in 27. We right now are projecting, and this is all based on the construction schedule, but we're hoping to wait until the very beginning of 2027, January, February, to issue the additional $75 million that we need in debt service to complete that project. In addition to that, I think as everybody understands, it's $150 million in approved bonding, but that number is closer to 160, was really with total school construction cost. And we're eligible for reimbursement on the 55% up to the 160 based on that being the use of premiums. If we were to need additional funding to finish a few critical projects, we might have to go in a different direction where it may not include the full 55%. So I just wanted to note that. It's really not anything that I can change or you can change, the debt service impact, but that's really ultimately the driver. And I think all of us were hopeful it wouldn't have as much of a significant effect on our operating programs, but I think those close to it knew that there would be some challenges that lie ahead. I think the other thing I wanted to mention is like the school, the town in completing this past year our 5 collective bargaining agreements, needed to make some critical decisions regarding our people, right? Our staff, our faculty, our teachers, our professional staff in the town, as well as our support staff. And I think we did the right thing by making the modifications that were needed, although that now, and we have to understand this, now exacerbates that true cost of what it takes to retain high-quality, competent, professional people in a community that has expectations that demand that, which I think we are, both on townside services and within our school department. So that is something we're going to also need to keep an eye on. In terms of state aid, the council, I did want to note, and I'm sure the school committee is aware of this, just recently has started to support resolutions. It's not something that in this community, like many others, they've actively taken a role in engaging through resolution form, our legislators and those at the State House, but recently supported a comprehensive resolution that supports the Blue Ribbon Commission's report. That was recently released and has recently taken hold in some draft legislation. I'm not sure if that's been posted yet, but I did get a copy of it recently, posted just recently. So, and the reason why the council chose to support that, which I think they're seeking community support, legislative support, school committee support, to be able to support that, is that we're just not seeing another alternative that can help us as a district and community address some of the, what we'll call inequitable distribution of funding from our perspective. Clearly, that's not the perspective of all throughout the state, but how the funding formula is crafted, how it is many times manipulated and altered year in and year out. And I think we feel strongly that, as presented by the experts that worked with the commission, that there is incredibly more stability in the draft that's been presented. What this does is really just takes a redistribution of funding and places much more responsibility on the state's shoulders than it does on municipalities. So clearly, we can't argue with that. And it's very similar to what you see in many other New England states. Although what's going to occur is there'll be a full vetting process. The state of Rhode Island is not financially in a position to fund this program all at once. It's hundreds of millions of dollars. I think, and speaking to former Congressman Cicilline, who was really spearheading this as the facilitator for the Rhode Island Foundation, who helped compile the Blue Ribbon Commission, he feels comfortable it's going to take multiple years, probably 2 to 4 years, to see it through the process. But as he stated to me in a committee directly, that when we were discussing it with him regarding with other mayors and managers from around the state, there's an expectation that you can't tinker with it. You can't tinker with 2 components because the rest of them fall away and they're not as effective. So really, it's an all or nothing program. He does expect some modifications to occur, but for those that have read through the report, what this would do is ground in the stability of certain cost items that the district would be able to track much more effectively, and would actually add, at a point in time where they did the statistical review, about $1.9 million into the district, above and beyond what you received today. So clearly, those are a number of the reasons why we're supporting it. I think there'll be significantly more conversations that we have, but I just wanted to make sure that those that are here tonight, joining us for the budget discussion, as well as the school committee administration, are fully aware that the council backs that. And we'll back a better plan once we see one, but we just don't see it at this point. And I believe with the weight of the Rhode Island Foundation and the network that they put together and the stakeholders that they brought to the table, that there will be some traction associated with this in this session and probably the next 2 years. At a very high level, that's what I wanted to impart on the school committee this evening. Again, timeline-wise, as the school committee finishes its budget proposal with the administration in the next several weeks, we'll receive that. We're fairly close to a draft on the town side. I probably will not be releasing that till the end of the month, or if not on May 1st. But at this point, I want to, and again, I think the school committee, as noted at the last meeting, understands ultimately it's a town council decision, although the recommendations that have made by the town administration have not always made their way through council review, but I would say the core components of them remain fairly steady, and that I'll continue to update myself with the superintendent in our biweekly meetings that we have regarding some of the other challenges that you're facing, so that I too can defend and provide support where support's needed as we go forward. So I'm happy to answer any questions that the committee members or administration may have, but I'm gonna pause there.
I was just curious that what you said about the pool experience rating for the
Yes.
trust.
Yes.
So does that mean that the town is rated in a pool of other towns?
Yes.
Okay, and the school department is rated individually, as I understand it?
Except for the fact they're rated individually, although a pooling effect does occur regarding the scaling and the metrics that are utilized regarding where you fall. So because of the fact that you fell above the average, you could anticipate the trust. Clearly, I can't talk about that openly because we've got other competitors in the industry that
Sure.
would love to know how that's done.
Sure.
Although I think the town saw a little bit of a bump because we're riding a little bit below the average, and the school saw a little bit of a decrease because you're riding above. But I think that is the main benefit of our participation, as well as Maggie and others know who's actively involved in the trust, the multitude of other programs that are offered for all of our staffing. Actually, I'm probably going to forget what it was. No, here it is. We recently hosted the 22nd Loss Prevention Award Luncheon, and the school department, East Greenwich, was noted on a couple of cases, receiving a $2,000 scholarship to support the training of various staff members. And actually, your school safety committee was noted with a number of others for their success rate in tracking of incidents and claims. So it's really a joint effort. It's a professional organization. We try to leave politics out of it and just come in and get the work done and get the lowest rates we can for the best services as possible. So, but I'm happy to talk to you about that offline, Gene.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, a
Thank
little bit
you.
more. Sure.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Town Manager, for coming. I think we are all pleased to hear about your recommendation about our appropriation to the town council. I know that does make finishing up our budget process just that much easier,
Understood.
where we're not speculating on an amount. So thank you for that. And also, for coming and discussing in some detail about the trust. I know we had a lot of questions for Maggie at the last budget workshop, and she did a great job of answering all of them, but I think sometimes insurance is kind of a murky business, and it helps to understand very specifically what we would need to do in order to bring those costs down. I think that's important for our members to know, so thank you for all of that information. And as far as the town council resolution, it's nice to see you joining the resolution game. We've been in it for a while, and
Yes.
we are proponents of resolutions, but appreciate the support that the town council is taking in, at a state level. I know you're always very active, just on these issues that really do impact equity, not just financially, but how that trickles down into equity for our students and for our communities, when we're talking about, tax dollars that we all pay into the state. So it is great to know that we are moving forward with that. We've been working and advocating about the fund balance here, at least a few of us, for as long as we've been doing this work. And so it is heartening to know that there may be some traction about a formula that's going to actually move the needle a little for communities like ours, and, districts that have results, that show results in education, but year after year sit here begging for funds. So
I think we know
appreciate
the
it.
process is going to be involved,
It
right?
will be very
and
involved.
Resolutions are the easy.
They're great.
They're a step you have to take,
Yep.
and like written testimony.
Yep.
But I think we should all anticipate that East Greenwich is going to have a physical presence.
Absolutely.
In terms of in-person testimony, and when that comes forward, because I think we look at equity differently here, compared to how equity is looked at in
Yes.
other places. So I think it's very important that if, and what I say to the governor often is that we want to prop up all districts,
Yes.
right? We're not looking to weight anybody down, right? And
Absolutely.
we're not looking to slow down. We want our progress to continue. So to do that is going to be a challenge, but it comes at a good time. It's an election year, so everyone's paying attention.
This is true. So, well, thank you very much for that update. I really appreciate you being here. I
you.
know the rest of us do as well. And I'm sure that if anybody has any questions for you after this, should they direct them straight
Please.
to you?
To me directly, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, and also there have been some comments, I just wanted to make sure, about, we've had a discussion about the format that you would all like to see our budget in. So I'm sure you and Tom are having those conversations, but just to shore that up, since it's gonna be kind of a tight turnaround between when we
Understood.
approve our budget and when we need to get it to you. So I want to make sure it's what you want to see, so.
Sounds great.
All right,
Thanks
thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Perfect. Great, thank you.
Okay. I think we can keep moving along. Yes, I think so. Okay, so next item on our agenda is to move into our budget workshop. I just wanted to comment, we do have space for public comment on the agenda tonight about the budget. So as usual, I'll have the school committee ask any questions or have any discussion that they want to have regarding Dr. Kenworthy's presentation, and after that, we'll open it up to public comment. But I think once the presentation is over and we have that discussion, I may let everyone just have a few minute break, really quick, before we dive into public comment, if that works for everybody. So just wanted to do that little bit of housekeeping. And I will turn it over to Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you, Ms. Powell. So as everyone knows, we are here for our third and final budget workshop before the school committee is scheduled to vote on a budget, school committee approved budget for us to turn over to the town. That is scheduled to take place on April 7th, 1 week from where we sit tonight. So this is the last opportunity for me to, I've been taking feedback along the way in the process from the committee and trying to work that in. So tonight I will be presenting a scenario from you, not a whole lot of substantive changes to revenues and expenditures. However, this version that you will see tonight does introduce $350,000 of fund balance into the revenue equation, which again, I discussed at the last workshop, the reasons why you hold off on taking that step. But again, I think we are at that point, right, where we need to discuss what a reasonable use of fund balance would be. So you will see my recommendation for that tonight in the form of $350,000. And then with that, and I'm going to say this several times through the presentation, because as I was working through that number with our school and district leaders, what became apparent to me is that I could put a proposal together that you will see tonight that guarantees that no staff member would be laid off through this budget process. Now, I'll say that with a caveat because, as you know, we do every year have a number of non-tenured teachers for various reasons connected with state law that do receive layoff notices. In many cases, may get rescinded. So, but separate from that, there would be no additional layoffs needed through this budget process when all is said and done. Okay? So I just want to be clear on that. So with that, the agenda for tonight, again, we're going to kind of pick up in the place where we left off at the last meeting. I'll talk about how that introduction of $350,000 in fund balance helps us kind of change the equation on the expenditure side and what we were able to do with staffing. I do want to, before we end, I know there were some questions on athletics last time, and I apologize I didn't have those notes in front of me, so I included an overview for this evening. And then really to cover that, because I know one of the things that had come up in discussion was, well, what if? Well, we heard a very positive outlook from our town manager tonight on his recommending to the council a 4% allocation for us, but we know nothing is guaranteed until that final council vote is taken. And then there is always the possibility that our state aid number, we're already seeing a reduction. We would hate to see this scenario, but there is the possibility where we could see actually less money when the General Assembly votes. So again, just so you know what you would be approving next week, none of those scenarios that I'll mention in that worst case scenario are part of that. However, I just wanted you to have a picture of where we would be going at that point, which would be after June 1st. And I'll talk about how that factors in as well into the decisions that we would have to make. Okay, so timeline-wise, we've looked at this slide several times along the way. As you know, our first budget workshop was on February 10th, and that followed months of work on the school department side from primarily our school and district leaders and working with their various staff members, and before the holiday break, submitting what was essentially their budget requests for next year. And then throughout the month of January, we gave those individuals an opportunity to present to a small team of myself, Ms. Baker, school committee members sat in on that as their schedules permitted. And then I had to take all of that information and again get it into a workable format. So not every request that a school or district leader made it into that first budget workshop meeting. But on that first workshop on February 10th, what I presented for you without getting into the revenue picture was we would probably be looking at about $2.5 million worth of requests that we would have to find a way to fund, right? And again, I don't think that anything that I presented on February 10th in that first workshop was an unreasonable request from any of our school or district leaders. A couple weeks ago when we were together on March 17th, at that point, the main change was I introduced what the revenue picture would look like without the use of fund balance at that time. And with that, we saw that in the best case revenue scenario, that is anticipating 4% from the town, we made a lot of assumptions on the revenue side on things with our building rental use, right, and our CTE tuitions from the high school of really, setting some goals that we're going to work hard to achieve. But those are all factored into that revenue number as well that we looked at on March 17th. So with that, we saw that we could, in the best case scenario, get about $1.4 million in revenue there. So again, there was quite a lot of work still to be done between that $2.5 million number and that $1.4 million number. So I talked about how we tried to address that as much as we could on the non-personnel operating side. We're going to see some additional changes to that this evening. But then, again, where we left the conversation on March 17th did include some personnel staffing reductions that would have been necessary. So this evening, again, I'll be introducing $350,000 of fund balance into the revenue equation. And again, I will talk about what changes I would recommend, kind of having that big picture view of the district as a superintendent that are in the best interest of our students. Again, I'll say several times this evening, this budget, if we were to leave things here tonight, you approve this budget next week on April 7th, it does not lay off any additional staff member going forward. Okay. Then we have the rest of the timeline there. You will need to adopt the budget on April 7th. We will submit to the town on April 15th. The town council will deliberate from that point forward, and sometime in June, we will receive both the final word on the town council approved budget. Comes about the same time that the state aid final number is approved by the General Assembly, right? So in some cases, there are changes that do have to be discussed. Again, I will talk about how that may factor in before we conclude tonight, because a key date in all of that will be June 1st, okay? All right. Again, we've seen this slide several times, but just to keep the focus on our district strategic plan priority goals, right, of excellence in learning. We know we have a distinguished teaching and talented support staff. We are always trying to make sure that we have efficient and innovative systems, as well as keeping our community engaged. And so this budget was definitely constructed with those priority goals in mind. And then this slide we have included in each of the presentations. And again, we heard already this evening in some of the discussion is in everything we do, we want to make sure that we can maintain those outcomes, right, from our students, those high expectations that we have here, rightly so, in East Greenwich. Okay, I want to come back to a slide here just to kind of pick up a conversation a little bit. This slide was included on the February 10th workshop. I didn't include it in the slides for the last workshop, but again, I just want to kind of, reemphasize from the conversations that we were having on March 17th in that second budget workshop. Again, we have a great district with amazing staff members who work extremely hard, right? We all know that, but sometimes there can be areas when we're looking at the data that we have presented to us where we can make reductions and still, meet, the expectations we have for students within our contractual and legal obligations, including if we are looking at any changes related to special education, a free and appropriate public education in the least restrictive environment for all students, right? You hear those acronyms thrown around all the time, FAPE and LRE. I would never present a recommendation to you that did not meet FAPE or LRE or any other contractual or legal obligations, right, that we have. So it is my responsibility to point those things out to you where I think certain adjustments can be made when tough decisions are necessary. And we are definitely at that point in time, unfortunately, in this budget that we're looking at for fiscal year 2027. So, one of the drivers of that, this picture would not look different for, I would say, 90% of districts in Rhode Island, okay? Every district in Rhode Island since the pandemic has lost student enrollment. Every public school district in Rhode Island since the pandemic, just about, except for a select handful, have lost student enrollment, all right? And we're no different here in East Greenwich. And so, again, when you look at that picture over time, what the staffing levels and things that we need when we are down a couple hundred students overall, those things have to be looked at, okay? And so again, that's just part of the work that I had to do leading up to where we were on March 17th. Again, all of those things can be true at the same time, right? We can have, an amazing, hard-working, dedicated staff, right, and high expectations for our students, but sometimes we can, have to make the hard decisions that may be necessary to still meet those expectations, and that's the point that we find ourselves in this budget process. Again, good news is I'll skip down. We'll come back to this number at the very end for our proposed budget. So we see, a big change there from the numbers that we looked at the last meeting. That's with the introduction of that $350,000 of fund balance. So that's going to definitely change the picture for us, allow me to make additional recommendations related to staffing. But I also wanted to use this with another slide that we used in that first budget workshop on February 10th. I did not include in the last workshop meeting, but I did just want to come back to this for a couple of things I wanted to point out. When we were using this back on February 10th, right, we were focused on that fiscal year 2018 number, which anybody who lived in town or worked in the district or lived in town through that knows that was just a bad time fiscally for the district, right? We had the kind of double whammy there that you never want to see of a reduction in state aid combined with level funding from the town. And those things can really set districts back, right? And it takes a number of years to catch up. And so that process, definitely kind of accelerated a little bit from there. Dr. Quinn argues that, in many ways we're still recovering from, the effects of what happened in 2018, and I don't disagree either. I also just wanted to point out, though, those years that I have highlighted there during fiscal year 2021 and fiscal year 2024, those happen to be good years for the district, right? With the what we received in state aid and combined with the town appropriation in fiscal year 21. We had an additional $2.5 million of revenue to work with in the district. Again, that was the entire increase that I was presenting to you back on February 10th. In fiscal year 24, we had an additional $2.7 million from state aid and the town appropriation. Unfortunately, we just don't have those numbers. We've done everything that we can on the revenue side, and I will say before we end tonight with my recommendation for $350,000 worth of fund balance being introduced, that is as far as I could recommend to you that we go. Again, whatever decision you decide to make in a week, but I have to make the decision as superintendent that I feel is best for the long-term picture of the district. Okay, and again, we're in the second year of, as we look ahead to fiscal year 2027, of declining state aid. Right, it's just not a good situation to be in to have to recover from. All right. With that, I want to pick up the conversation with where we left things off at our last workshop meeting on March 17th, and I'm going to hand this slide over to Ms. Baker, and I do want to say that she has done a tremendous amount of work here on both of these items. We painted the picture for you of what we were facing in unbudgeted increases for our health and dental rates and the number we were seeing on our transportation bid. Again, Ms. Baker has done a tremendous amount of work over the past few weeks. She only called me into the final meeting with both entities here when we needed to come to final agreement. But I want to thank her for all of the work that she's done and just let her explain a little bit of how we got to the results that you see there at the bottom of the slide. So, Maggie?
Thank you, Dr. Kenworthy. So as Town Manager mentioned earlier, we have this reduction possibility from the trust with the GLP-1 drugs. So they're offering the option to all the members to adjust coverage. That will give us projected, decrease in our rate by 2 to 3%. And, this is important if we want to try to keep, costs fixed and maintain, the sustainability of the budget going forward. On the transportation piece of it, so you may remember that Dr. Kenworthy came to you with an audit to be done by Transpar, and this was in association with Mario Carreno from RIDE. And so through that process, there was, an opportunity that was identified on how to streamline our private school transportation. So by right-sizing the routes, and they had looked at our routes and did a presentation to us, they are able to, statewide transportation is able to pick up some of our private students on their bus. They have room on their buses, and they're coming through East Greenwich. And then, on top of that, coupled with that, we reached out to Ocean State. We had a conversation with them about absorbing some of our other private school students, and they are also able to do that within their daily operations of the bus. So, with those conversations going on, we have some reductions in the busing budget, which is that we can lose one full bus, one van, and 2 monitors on those buses that we have. So with all that change, what that has done is it's brought the transportation budget back into itself. So there is no, as we mentioned at the last meeting, we had this $200,000 piece hanging, and now with those changes, we do not.
So the bus reductions that are listed up here are for private school students, not students that are attending any of the 6 public
Correct.
schools?
Private school students.
In EG, okay.
Yes. Yep. So what we have here is the increase, a deep reduction, actually, the increase in our health insurance rate, and now the decrease of 2% in the 3.28 only brought us to about $190,000 worth of an increase in the health insurance. Yeah, only. Because it was much higher, as you can see on the prior slide on March 17th, which we were in the range of $350,000.
And the 2% is from?
That would be from a change in the
In
prescription
GLP-1
for the
coverage?
GLP drugs on weight loss, not on, as
So
manager, not,
specific ones?
so it has nothing to do with the diabetes drugs, as he mentioned.
Okay.
It's only to do with the weight loss drugs. That's it.
Okay.
So we're saving $161,000. So we're saving $161,000 on health and dental from where we were the last time. That's
Correct.
terrific.
Yes,
And that's because they cover the diabetes drugs, but they don't cover the weight loss drugs.
there is an
They
option.
don't cover Zepbound and,
So the option
Wegovy.
is that districts, school districts and municipalities could opt out of covering that drug
Okay.
going forward in the future.
and what's the, on transportation is,
It's for private students, so we're
yeah,
required
but
to,
from the total we saw the last time, is this a $200,000 reduction?
yes, because
Okay.
because a bus
So
and a
Maggie,
van plus a
I
monitor.
think you're bearing the lead, so you're showing up tonight and you found us $360 some odd thousand of money that we thought we had to spend last time that we don't have to spend?
Yes.
Is that true? You are officially bearing the lead, but that's great. So that's huge. So thank you for that.
But Tim, that's what we do. We have to find the
I,
cuts.
well, I'm,
However we negotiate
I'm in
them, or
awe.
whatever we
We
have to
we can get to
do.
the fund balance in a few minutes, but that's terrific. I
Thank
just
you.
want to make sure I was tracking. Thank you.
So, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't know why this is so hard, but the change in the medical coverage, it's an option? I'm confused about what the actual, like,
So-
to our people who work here, what's the difference?
Let me go back to the beginning, what we
Thank you.
discussed
Sorry.
in the last meeting. So in October of '24, the trust did add to all the prescription coverage, that weight loss drug. It has increased all the rates across municipalities and school districts because of the use of those drugs and the promotions that are going on out there. At the time when they did this, they thought it was a great idea. It's going to help people lose weight, so there'll be less medical claims, and, the thought process was really great. But now it's taken on its own, situation where you have, Weight Watchers suggesting this, CVS mini clinics, all of it, there's commercials on everything. And so the whole group had to cover it, and now they've, changed it where it's recommended that you could or you cannot. You can decide what you want to do. Each district, each municipality can decide, do they want to cover or not cover the drug for weight loss.
So then, does that mean that we're not covering it? How are we getting, how does that result in a reduction in our costs?
Well, we're taking the recommendation that it will save us 2% off our health insurance or 3%.
So, I just want to say it out
do
loud,
not-
so we're not going to cover weight loss medications, is that right? It doesn't seem like it's
Yeah, the coverage will be for the diabetes portion of that drug, but it will not be for the weight loss piece of
Okay.
the drug.
Are there any other medical conditions that we're considering cutting coverage for?
No.
Okay.
We're not, payers everywhere are been cutting.
I understand that, I just think there's a vibe, I think, about weight loss medications and the way that they're treated in the world, kind of, and so I just want to be clear that we're deciding that we're going to not cover one medical condition in order to save an amount of money that will make it possible for us to not lay off people, and that's important. I understand that that's like a necessary choice. But
If you go on to Wachovie's website, you can see there are some options for people to still get the medication, not covered by a health insurance plan, and you can get some rebates from the company itself.
Mm-hmm.
So they can still use the drug, it just may cost a little bit more.
Okay, thank you.
That was going to be my question. Is there going to be a way for people who are on this medication to stay on it? Because I know that once you're on it, going off of it can actually have pretty severe health implications.
Right.
But also, excuse me, sorry, I just completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah, no, they would be
So
able to use
options
it.
for people, are we going to try to make our employees aware of like other options there might be?
We
And
would absolutely send out
Because
notification about it.
they're not affordable without insurance, as
Right.
far as I know.
If you go on their website, they do have some options for different people to use. They do offer, like 3-month supplies and in different sizes of medications.
And the
if
trust
you look at it.
determined, though, that 1 year of experience data was sufficient for them to
Exactly,
decide they were not going to reap benefits in the future, because these are like chronic diseases, so it takes a while. So I'm wondering if there was any discussion, I'm not trying to say we should, any discussion about if the experience data changes once people do stay on them for a while and we see reduced claims, would it be something we would be able to add back, or were they not even talking about that
By
at all?
by their analysis, which they're looking at because it's really self-insured, so they're
Yeah.
looking at not only next year, they're looking at future years. They're feeling like this is the way to get the rates down. This is their analysis on that.
Can I just add to that? I know this from work, so I don't mean to blather about it, but Wegovy just launched a pill, which is significantly, so that's weight loss, not diabetes,
Right.
significantly less than the injectable. You can get a compound that works very well, Roe, you've probably seen the Serena Williams ad. I'm not saying that's quite the same thing as getting the Novo Nordisk or Lilly drug itself, but it's pretty darn close. And I guess my only other comment was, I don't look at this myself as this is not something that the East Greenwich School District is doing to employees or anything. This is part of a nationwide, effort on the part of insurers. Hate the payer, not the school district. And I don't think we're leaving anybody who's on a drug right now who's had a lot of success with it, and it does a lot more things than weight loss too. So these are truly wonder drugs. But there are a lot more affordable options as we sit here today than there were 3 months ago. And it's a great point, though, to say, are we educating our, workforce around that, and can we support them in that? But hate the payer. They're easy to hate.
And I do hate the pair, and I do think it's important to, I mean, when we talk about, you can access compounding pharmacies, you can access compounding pharmacies for many different medications. And I understand that, like, we have to make difficult decisions, and I would rather make a difficult decision about, healthcare coverage than I would about teachers or paraprofessionals or other people. I just think, I want us to be really clear and really honest about the decisions that we're making, and not to say, like, oh, and you can get this, you can buy compounded, not FDA-approved medication on the internet. You can purchase it through different vendors, and that's not healthcare. We wouldn't say that about cancer drugs. We wouldn't say that about, erectile dysfunction medications. You know what I mean? Like, there are things that we think that we take seriously, and there are things that we think are a little recreational, and I think that's, sorry if I scandalized anyone, I know it's a middle school. But these are all, these are the things that the people who work here need health coverage, and so we're making a decision that does have, impact on people, and there are options that are lower in cost. I wish that the trust would look into some lower cost options so that they could not be so, and I do think it's really important for us to follow the details of how much this is actually impacting their bottom line versus, or the bottom line of any insurer, versus how much this is sort of a nice little way to sort of be like, and we're just going to pull this back real quick because you guys got too enthusiastic. I'm just saying.
And I want to piggyback off of Claire, and I'm sorry to belabor the point, and I know we need to move on, but I feel like I would be asking these questions about any health insurance that we are providing for our staff, or the recommendation is if you want it to be affordable, this specific thing is something we've decided that is no longer patients and doctors, but an insurance company saying, we're just not going to cover it. And if you want to be able to offer any health insurance at all, which obviously we do, this panel of a board, which Mr. Nada had wonderful information, but he's not a doctor, a board of people like that deciding healthcare for our community. So I just wanted to be clear, it's not even just this specific drug. If we were having to carve out any potentially life-saving medical care for people, I think it's important to have these conversations, because none of us really should be in that position. So it's unfortunate that we have to do this. I really appreciate all the work that you had to do with the trust, Maggie. I know this is something that's happening all across the state. Every district that's a member of the trust is having the same conversation about this same thing, because that is the solution that they've, honed in on. I think it's unfortunate that we're having to do this. Obviously, we don't have another $170,000. I just hope that we'll keep with that conversations, and as we look at outcomes, or if rates drop down, or people, like the pool starts seeing some better experience data, that maybe this is a conversation we can bring back, so that we can consider covering, necessary medications for our employees in the future.
And this is something that would start, obviously, not at this very moment. It's July 1st, so people would be notified of that, and it would be I think, Town Manager Notice said that it would be a yearly decision made. So it comes up again and things are better, and it's something obviously we can go back and look at again. No one likes drugs being taken off pharmacy coverage. I think we've all been up against having a doctor prescribe something to us and it not being covered by insurance. We have excellent health insurance here. One of the benefits we do have is for those who are on the HSA here, they can use those dollars to pay for that drug. So they can use that money if they have savings in their HSA account.
Sorry, I just wanted to, just to give it some context too, this is something that has gone through, mental health parity is another thing that has historically been, very much an issue. Parity is always going to be an issue with anything that feels squishy, and so it's not, and I agree with Allison that any medication that's seen as optional is worth just looking at closely. And when it was therapy, when it was psychiatric hospitalization, all those kinds of things, we did, and we can make changes in the way that these things are treated on the state level as well.
And I don't want anyone to think it was taken lightly when this just, we
No.
were discussing this in any way.
And I don't think it, absolutely, I want to be really clear that this is not we are the last we are the goalie here, right? Like, there are a lot of places where this proverbial ball has been, you know, nobody has stood in the way of this. It's just that it just seems like we should be honest about how much all of the things that have happened will impact some of the people that work in this district. And I thank you very much for
And we'll
the
work
cost
with anyone
savings.
who's affected
For
by
sure.
this as
Yeah,
well.
and the
Try to
HSA thing
maneuver through it.
is a reasonable and, you know, kind of a smart choice.
All right. Well, thank you to Ms. Baker. Again, I will say just one other thing before we leave the topic. I did come into the final meeting with the trust on the health rate side. It was the only option they were presenting. So again, we've talked about both of those scenarios and how we were able to reach those reductions, but that would leave us, that left us with that $189,184 figure to try to figure out where we were going to make those adjustments. So moving to the next slide. Again, we tried to do as much as we could on the non-personnel operating budget side, right, and to absorb. You see the March 17th column is where we left the conversation off. Essentially, what we had to do there to make the adjustments on March 17th, I was trying to hold on to that overall number, $11,857,381, was roughly about a 2.8% increase in keeping with the rate of inflation. You know, these individual budgets include everything from supply and materials all the way up to our high-quality curriculum material resources, right? If we utility costs, right, on the facilities budget side. So if we think about anything in our expenses that is non-personnel related, trying to at least keep up with the rate of inflation is, you know, a good goal to have. However, these changes bring us down below that rate, right? So we did go back, level funded each of our school budgets to the FY26 number and asked each of our school, and you know, also did that with athletics, we can see there, a few other things, and asked those school and district leaders to make those adjustments. I do want to point out a few things. Just again, not only now are we dipping below the rate of 2.8% rate of inflation increase with just shy of a 1% increase in our total operating budget. But when we talk about level funding the school budget, it's less than even level funding them, because as you know, we added back in a small amount of money for field trips, right? That was something that was completely removed from last year's budget in the FY26 number. So each of those schools has a certain amount of money sitting in their budgets that they're not going to be able to touch for anything that's non-field trip related, right? So this is really, while the dollar amount is level funding there, it's really a bigger hit than that for the schools. Particularly as I look at Cole Middle School and East Greenwich High School. If you remember throughout our meetings, one of the differences there, if you see the amounts of their budgets compared to our elementary schools, you know, not only is it a size difference, you know, compared to the total number of students and staff, but just historically, and we kept it this way throughout our budget process this year, anything related to curriculum on the elementary side sits in the teaching and learning budget, with the exception of Cole Middle School and the high school. So their budgets also include all of their curriculum purchases, including anything related to high quality curriculum materials. So again, it's more than just looking at a level funded picture there. Athletics we're going to come back to later in the presentation, but again, that amount was taken down to level funding. So we're looking at a slight increase still in technology. Just as I've keep indicating, I am in discussions with the town and will be anticipated I will be bringing forward a recommendation for a municipal leasing option to help us purchase and have a constant technology refresh cycle moving forward. So I've just been trying to make sure that we preserve the money there for that. And yeah, so again, 0.93% total increase on this budget when we adjusted as much as possible to make up for that additional $189,000. Oops, sorry. Okay, so again, with having to account for that additional $189,000 still remaining from the health and dental adjustments, we did not want to make any more reductions related to staffing. There's only going to be restorations that we'll talk about going forward. But I did just want to start, this was our slide from March 17th. Again, this is where we had kind of started the conversation on March 17th, and that number, when we accounted for everything possible up to that point on the non-personnel operating budget side, just could not be met through what we had with our revenues left, okay? And so that took us to this slide. This is, again, we're going to see adjustments to this slide, but this was in accounting for essentially $713,465 on March 17th. These were the recommendations that I was making related to personnel. Again, any recommendation that you see here was meeting all contractual legal obligations, including anything related to special education. Okay, but we're going to see some changes here. All right, so our overall revenue slide. The only change here would be all of the other categories are the same that we saw on March 17th, but now we would be adding, or I would be recommending that we add that $350,000 of fund balance. Again, I am assuming that we were going to get there in the conversation. I wanted to present you with a feasible option as we move into April 7th. And I do think that that $350,000 recommendation is, at least for me, the kind of threshold is as far as I would be comfortable recommending. I just want to remind the committee, I was not here, obviously, until the start of the school year, but in fiscal year 2025, you had to, for various reasons, allocate that $842,000 figure in fund balance. Anytime we're looking at a fund balance allocation on the revenue side, the first thing that Ms. Baker and I are going to have to do when July 1st comes is try to account for that money, right? Because that will be a revenue gap for us in the coming year that we can't count on until we know what's going to happen. So I know when I first started at the beginning of the school year, there was a lot of the discussion was centered around the fact that we had $1 million left over, from FY26 in additional fund balance. That was because throughout all of FY26, the district was trying to cover that $842,000 in fund balance that was put there. So it's just this revolving cycle. But again, we managed that $300,000 figure well this year. So I tried to keep it within that range. Again, is something that Ms. Baker and I would be comfortable with. But that's how we arrived at the $350,000 number.
So just to be clear again, because I know fund balance becomes like a sticky issue every cycle. When we have to present a budget that zeroes out at the end. We cannot deficit spend. It has to, revenues and expenditures have to be equal, or else it's not a legit budget. When we can't do that with other expected revenue, all the other things that are listed, appropriations, state aid, rental income, we have to fill the gap either with reductions on the operating side or with fund balance if we have it. But when we put fund balance into the budget, we basically do everything that we can throughout the year to not spend it. Yes, like that is kind of, it's in there so that our budget balances, but then as we find ways to not have to use it either through breakage or not filling positions or not buying supplies or all different ways that we can save. We actually try to come as close as we can to what the operating budget would be if we were allowed to pass it without putting that number in there. We actually pretend almost like we don't have it unless there's nothing else we can do, yes?
Correct,
Okay,
or else-
and that's why
yeah.
we end up with those surpluses at the end of the year, because it's like, we are planning to use our savings account, but we did everything we could to not dip into our savings account, so we still have our savings account. And that, I think, gets confusing to
Right.
people. It's through very stringent, prudent spending throughout the year to not actually dip into it.
And the budget that we're presenting is only what we have knowledge of at this moment. So
Right.
things change, students leave the district, whatever those things may be. And so that shifts and that
Right.
becomes part of the coverage of that fund balance.
Right, because our numbers are moving on a daily basis. Okay. Thanks.
Good.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're only supposed to use fund balance for one-time non-recurring charges. So we are planning for something that would be recurring because we don't have a lot of good options.
Yes.
This is a serious question. Have you spoken to the town about having them deploy some of their fund balance, which is quite large? I have a long memory in my 5.5 years here, so I remember when we paid for the turf field, when we don't own it. We paid quite a lot of money. Those charts you were showing before were perfectly good, but there were 2 years, and they were 2 post-pandemic years, when we had all kinds of, academic teaching challenges and attendance challenges across the board, where we got less than 2%. So I think we're on a better footing now than we have been, but certainly it hasn't helped when we've been arm twisted to spend money that we shouldn't have had in the past, and when we've received less than what is a normal covering cost of inflation, at least a 2%. So I don't say that to be a buzzkill, but I do say that because the town has never used their fund balance, which is quite substantial, to help us. And so I think everybody knows, but the 4% comes from the tax transfer, the appropriation doesn't come from the fund balance. So is that something that we have had discussions about or could raise?
I mean, I have not had that discussion. It could certainly be something if you want to work that into your final recommendation on April 7th. Again, I used the $350,000 figure here. I think comfortably, Ms. Baker and I feel we can manage that number if it had to come from fund balance. If you want to, though, make another recommendation, wherever the additional $350,000 comes from would not change the picture of anything else that I'm going to present going forward.
I just want to add that I think they've done a terrific job here in terms of, this is where, the superintendent and the finance director earn their keep is, we have to scramble and do everything we can to reduce expenses wherever we can. I'll also add that, Dr. Kenworthy said that this is as bad as 2018. It's worse. It's a lot worse. The reason is, so in 2026, the funding formula called for a $1.7 million reduction, which is 28% in our state aid. That triggered a provision called the Poverty Loss Stabilization Fund, which was designed to prevent really serious, devastating cuts to state aid. And as a result, we got an additional $1 million from that, more than the formula called for. This year, they deducted that from our state aid, so we didn't get it. We actually lost $1.8 million in state aid. It was just spread over 2 years. This year, technically, the state aid went up $600,000, but we lost the million. because they, deducted that from our, and if you look at the computation of the state aid, you'll see that they based it on the number with the full cut, not the one adjusted. Okay, so this is the biggest reduction this is probably twice the reduction we saw in 2018. I'm assuming 2018 was probably 2% of the operating budget. In 2010, we had one that was 6% of the operating budget when they cut 1.8 million out that year. But this is absolutely devastating. And I think this is not a bad outcome considering how terrible we got clobbered on the state aid. Naturally, we wish we didn't have to make cuts at all. But I think, first of all, I think the, finding $350,000 in savings, that's spectacular. That we are all very grateful for that. Secondly, not assuming the rate of inflation on the non-salary thing. I think that's prudent. All right. And third, the fund balance use. To me, that's a no-brainer because historically, at the end of the year, our actual expenses are $400,000 less than budgeted on average. So we have an expected surplus of $400,000. Expected meaning that's the long-term average surplus, not projected. We're not saying that's going to happen this year, but we're saying that if you look at all the data that we have, we tend to end up $400,000 ahead at the end of the year. And that typically goes into fund balance, which we've used for other purposes. I think it would be a very bad idea to lay people off to preserve that surplus. I think that's the first thing that should be jettisoned. And one way to do that is to say, okay, we're going to spend $350,000, which leaves us with an expected plus 50,000 change in fund balance. Yes, Tim. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Gene, that was well put. I certainly agree with you all the way on that. Just because we were talking about public policy before, I think we've said this in the past, but laws and public policy work best when there's a clear principle behind it so you can understand it, not when there's a convoluted, arcane, opaque formula that generates it. So to me, for the life of me, I don't understand why the same principle that applies at the local level, called maintenance of effort, should not apply at the state. I would love to see us advocate for that. I would love to see us send a petition to the state. I'd love to see us, get our legislators on board, because we didn't choose to support the latest revision to the funding formula, not that it's not well-intentioned, but because it lacks a lot of specificity and stuff. So that's a case where, I think that's what we ought to be advocating for. To yo-yo a school district's budget anywhere, any school district, from year to year, again, based on something that no one can articulate why, and to depend on the legislature, which, caters to the urban core and is too controlled by, legislative leaders rather than rank and file legislators, I don't hold out a lot of hope for it. I don't really think a lot of the State House is going to come on board if we, go sign in blood. But that's just the way it is. But we ought to at least put some pressure on them. There's no way that the state can justify, reducing our budget year over year to such a great degree. It's madness. The town can't do it, but the state can.
Right, and I think we should be arguing that they should have based our state aid, our formula aid, they should have applied that 600,000 increase to what we actually got not what the unadjusted one was. And that would give us another 600,000.
And I think as the whole state budget process moves forward, municipal budgets go in, I think that is work that we could do. I mean, we have to pass this budget. School budgets have to get passed much sooner than municipal budgets, and then the House doesn't, consider the governor's budget until June. But I think that is definitely a worthwhile thing for us, at least in this community, to petition for, because I think we're talking about an exception. I mean, one that probably should not have to be made, because it should just be a given. But I think that is something that beyond this, I don't know that it can impact the decision we make on voting for this budget, but I definitely think that that is something we should be working on at the same time for this fiscal year at least, because I think there's a really good argument to be made there that
Yeah,
is not
absolutely.
an equitable formula. And we've had success, not huge success, but you and I have seen our state aid get cut by a pretty bad amount multiple times since we've been on the school committee, and I think we have had some success at having some of it restored as it goes through the process, and I think this is a great argument, one of the best we've had, honestly, and I think we should be doing that, so.
And I'm on record as kind of agreeing in principle with the idea of the funding formula. The problem I have with it is the volatility. That's what kills it.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Oh.
Maggie, can you just give us an update on the current fund balance right now?
I think your mic is off, Maggie.
The last report in January, so the ending fund balance as of June 30th of '25 was $1,710,741. We have transferred not only the $300,000 that's on that 26 budget line, but another $85,000, so $385,000 in fund balance for this fiscal year, leaving us a balance of $1,325,741 at this time.
Is it 1.3?
1.3, yes.
Okay. I feel a little better after hearing Jean that we usually have a positive 400, but we also have to, well, at our last facilities meeting, we also, discussed we have to get 2 new boilers at Cole, and that's going to cost from $300,000 to $800,000, and that has to be next year. And then Meadowbrook is hopefully the year after, and that could be another $500,000. So I just wanted to say that for the record.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when I talk about trying to not use fund balance and hold on to it, it's for those, capital needs that we know we're going to have, and we have a couple of big ones we know one way or another that are coming due next year. But again, I wanted to present you an option with a reasonable amount of fund balance being used. Only difference on this side, every other revenue figure for FY27 was what we saw last budget workshop, including at the town appropriation is the full 4%, and then a lot of our other revenue categories being stretched about as far as we can comfortably take them.
One more little thing, too. I mean, you said this before, Tom, and again, I think you're doing the right thing, but correct me if I'm wrong. I think in the last meeting, we also said we're going to forsake social studies, high-quality curriculum for another year. And
Science. We're going to do social studies, but we're going to put science off for one more year.
We're doing social studies?
Yes.
Okay,
It's the least expensive of the two.
okay. Well, I was going to say, at a time when civics education has never been more important, and we should have kids at the barricades, I hope we're not
Right.
losing social studies. But science, too. I mean, this is a
But, yeah.
complex world, and to, go without scientific literacy and all that. So anyway, there's some other things here that are really important that we're, slow walking, or we have to make really tough choices on, so.
Jean, and then Claire has her hand, just so you know.
Just one other comment. In 1977, so 50 years ago, the school budget was $4.89 million. And you say, oh, wow, look how big it is now. It is, but if you annualize that, it's 4.8% a year for 50 years. We're well below that for the last 15 years. I mean, we're at 2 and change on the town appropriation, and we've done a little better on the state aid side, but still that's like 3 and change. And the 50-year average is 4.8%.
Oh, anytime the science curriculum is brought up, I just always want to kind of reassure ourselves that, myself, that the science curriculum, high-quality curriculum, probably might even benefit from having another year, right? Like that, like.
Correct,
That
yeah.
it's still in
The state is
development
not
and-
where they
Sure.
promised to be, and for, a lot of good reasons on their side, I'm sure, where the recommendations were supposed to be by this time. So yeah, by waiting another year, we could have better options to choose from, absolutely.
Anytime, in every fresh meeting, I just want to make sure that
They've
it's
been
not.
working on that for a long time.
Oh, yeah, but it's just that it's not, that's a strategic choice as well, and one that we think is educationally sound.
One of many strategic
Or
choices.
I should
yes.
say Dr. Kimberly thinks is educationally sound. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move us on here. All right, so with that $350,000 of fund balance, changing the overall revenue equation, again, I've spent the last few weeks poring over, enrollment data, sitting with Ms. Noberlucci and Mr. Marcaccio particularly, and going through everything, and these are the recommendations that I would be bringing forward. With this $350,000 in fund balance that we restore, what I had listed as a reduction of a grade 1 section at Meadowbrook, that be restored. We restore the 1 district occupational therapist and 1 district speech and language pathologist that were on the list from last time. Again, although we were meeting and felt that we could meet the obligations we had to under FAPE or LRE, it was going to require a lot of changes in delivery, and so this will allow us the flexibility to continue to deliver the services that our families and staff have expected. And then this 0.5 district psychologist, if you remember, that was on the list, left remaining of positions that didn't even make the conversation, unfortunately, with a few others. But this is one that Mr. Marcaccio believes we are going to need one way or another. So either we work it in now, or for sure we're going to. It would be one of those positions that would be starting the year off telling you that we needed. He feels strongly about. So those 4 positions there, the 3.5 positions, would make up that $350,000. In additional revenue by bringing in the fund balance. I am still recommending that we reduce, and I have some slides to go into this in a little more detail, the grade 2 section at Frenchtown and the grade 3 section at Hannaford. With that, again, my recommendations, I need to be clear, are contingent on us having those student service coordinator positions that I'm recommending. 1 at the secondary level, 1 at the elementary level. They would be teacher leadership positions that exist within the teacher's bargaining unit. So teachers from within the unit could step up to take those positions. That would open up the positions that they are currently in. Again, all of that would have a domino effect as we lead up to the job placement process. So I would be comfortable making the recommendation that, I do believe that we can comfortably reduce that grade 2 section at Frenchtown and grade 3 section at Hannaford, but I would be saying here, I would not be laying off those staff members. That with the introduction of those student service coordinator positions, I feel like factored in with some other things, and in some cases there are things that I may only be privy to right now, and I'm sorry, that could come to fruition, that there would be available openings for everyone. And I would just like to remind the committee, I did not mention this directly last time, but you are all probably aware, because it predates me, a memorandum of agreement I have in my hands right here from 2024 with the East Greenwich Teachers Association that with the vacating of the special education department, secondary special education department chair position, which is happening this year with a retirement, that this memorandum of agreement states that when that position is vacated, it turns into an assistant director position for special education. Now, I am the one who is bringing this concept forward of possibly creating these two student service coordinator positions. I am the one who has had conversations with Mr. Marcaccio and Ms. Garno, our East Greenwich Teachers Association president, about having had experience with these positions and seeing that they could have the overall same benefit to us, but also have these other benefits of existing within the teachers union. But what I do have to say, and I will make this point again before we leave tonight, is that if we're not going to have those student service coordinator positions, then let's just keep this memorandum of agreement in place and go to the assistant director position. But one way or another, we need that additional oversight support in student services. Okay, and the last bullet here just speaks to our paraeducators. I know this number of 4 reductions was on here, but I've clarified this with union leadership. We've run multiple scenarios. We do not see any current employee who's not retiring, or there are some other situations that we know may be happening. It would not produce a layoff of any other current employee. Okay, so we would be moving. So you can see the numbers there from 80. We have 85 total paraeducators, 67 district employees, and then there are 18 other needs that we have that, for one reason or another, are not able to be filled with district employees, and Mr. Marcaccio has to go out to contractors. So again, that overall number would come down to 81. Mr. Marcaccio will work with principals and other leaders to make the final decision, but I am comfortable that we would be able to meet all of the needs that we have with those 81 total paraeducator positions. Okay. So just some of the backup sides. Again, some of this information was available to school committee in your backup last time, but we didn't get a chance to talk about it publicly. So again, I just want to show the numbers here of what we're talking about. Again, that Hannaford grade 3 position would be that grade 2 cohort in Meadowbrook that's moving up almost a 30, or over a 30 student reduction, and then Hannaford is also losing the largest class that it has currently with the 5th grade moving on to the middle school next year. So the overall numbers in Hannaford, right, are being reduced. That's another reason why one of the positions that we did not bring forward was the additional special educator at Hannaford, which we added for 1 year only this year because we knew what these enrollment numbers were going to look like. Again, they have an effect on the overall IEP population as well. Here in the Frenchtown reduction there, you can see again that's the current grade 1 student would be moving up to grade 2. Same thing, Frenchtown is losing its largest class currently. Okay, our incoming kindergarten classes are projected to be right around the same number, if not, again, at least on projections, what we're seeing now, if not a little less. So both cases, we will be moving from 5 sections to 4 sections. You can see the average class sizes there, which are well within our contractual class size limits. And to be clear again, I am saying that I would, as part of this, be saying that we're not going to lay these individuals off, but there will be a job to be determined later once we finish the job placement process for those individuals. Moving on to this slide, again, this is just additional backup as we've been, those other districts there, right, are real districts. I just listed them, anonymously here, but, I think this picture would be the same no matter what other districts we included here. We do have some, large districts like Providence, Warwick, Cranston. They're operating at a whole other staffing level than we are, right? We also have some, districts that are much smaller than us, like Narragansett, Jamestown, Little Compton. So again, they, wouldn't be factored in here on the other end. But these are the 3 most comparable districts to us. 6 most comparable, 3 being a little larger, 3 being a little smaller. Again, you can see every one of these districts has either an assistant director or that coordinator model for special education oversight. So again, I will say, if we're not going to have the coordinator model for for student service oversight, I will gladly revert back to this signed memorandum of agreement that puts an assistant director in place. Okay, and this slide just showing with a lot of changes underfoot that we know already, even outside of this budget process. Ms. Norbelucci, Mr. Mercaccio, and I meet every Monday morning. It's how we start our week off, in addition to all of the other meetings that we're in. But we spend at least an hour together at the start of each week, just making sure that things are coordinated at the district leadership level. So these changes would fully take effect into next year, but I need to make sure that everything in our district operates, I can be comfortable everything in our district is operating the way that it should. With that, I do think we need to let the Office of Student Services, address primarily the needs of students with IEPs and 504s. And right now, for a lot of historic reasons of the district, there were other things that were included in that office. We have, good, solid team in place here at the district leadership level. We work well together. I think we have a lot of great things that will happen moving forward, and we're going to put these further changes in place in addition to anything related to the budgetary moves that I indicated earlier. So with all of that, this would bring us to this slide, the introduction of the $350,000 of fund balance, what my recommendations would be for these positions. This would just be how this personnel-related slide would be updated for each of these categories. You can see the new FY27 totals, and on the personnel side, the overall increase being that 4.3% increase. So while on the non-personnel operating budget side, we dipped well below the rate of inflation. We are maintaining, a healthy overall increase there on the personnel side. I don't know if there are any other questions. These would, again, probably be best answered by Ms. Baker on this slide. Good. All right. So other than our kind of worst case scenarios that we'll talk about in a minute, this would bring us to this final slide here, just being how those updated revenue figures with the introduction of the $350,000 in fund balance, bringing our overall revenues to the $52,038,333 figure, and again how those high-level details related to salaries, benefits, and non-personnel operating expenditures balance off for expenditures. Okay, last couple of slides here. I just want to lead up to, I know there are questions of, well, what if we don't get 4% from the town, although, everything we heard from Mr. Nada tonight was very positive. Again, that could still be a possibility, or there could be, some, further, unforeseen thing that happens at the state level. So I did just want to touch a little bit on athletics. I know there were some questions that came up. This is what the actual numbers would look like here. Right, so that we have about 42% of our overall population at Cole participating in at least one sport, and 57% at the high school. We have a total of 40 individual athletic teams between Cole and the high school, including 4 unified teams, 2 at each school, right, which provide great benefits to our overall student body. So within the overall operating budget for athletics, it supports these various 40 athletic teams. Also, I can clarify, I know this question had come up, that close to $300,000 figure on the operating side for athletics does include all athletics transportation. Okay. But this is just, again, a picture of everything that they're supporting here. And, I think with athletics, the thing we have to keep in mind, and the reason that, at least in my recommendations, I have held off until this worst-case scenario slide, is there are multiple rulings at the state level that athletics and district-funded extracurricular activities that you have normally been funding. So I would say things like music programs, right? And we know we have a lot that happens at all of our schools with before and after school music programs. We have multiple rulings at the state level that those activities are considered part of the basic education program. Right? And we have to be making an effort to do everything that we can to continue to fund them. So unfortunately, I have to then present to you a budget that looks at all of those possible personnel adjustments before we get into making any recommendations that include athletics or extracurricular activities. However, with all of that, we'll go to the last slide here. So, again, this isn't, these are not set in stone scenarios, but what would happen if for some reason we did not get what we are expecting for the town appropriation or something else happens in state aid. And I just put these in buckets of $215,000 because that represents roughly half a percentage in town appropriation, and it also just this year happens to be about the amount that we lost in state aid. So, we started there as a starting point, but where would I have to go in recommendations to you? Well, again, that June 1st date becomes important here because we've lost the ability, and not that we want to do it, but we've lost the ability to lay off any teachers after that date by state law. So this is why you'll see some districts taking this up, and I've worked in a district like this where, and they may very well still operate this way, leading up to this conversation until they know exactly what their budget is going to look like at the end of June, they lay off the least senior people in each certification area. Okay, there are several districts that just do that as regular practice every year. We have not historically in this district, and I am not recommending, right, that we, based on some of our other conversations that we started introducing that. However, what that would bring us is that if we, for some reason, did not meet our expected revenue in the budget that I've presented to you after June 1st, we would not have that ability as part of any of these scenarios to lay off teachers. So you can see in each of these buckets, again, I included a reduction of the non-personnel operating expenses by $50,000. I think I would start there. Again, wouldn't want to, but if we had to, and you can see what that overall percentage increase is bringing us down to, all the way up to that worst case scenario. We're actually seeing a decrease in that side, which you saw last year, by the way. And I've been doing everything possible to try to avoid, just because again of all of the things that we've talked about that do happen on that operating side. Again, not that I would want to have to go here, but the library media specialist, the 1.0 addition that we're expecting at East Greenwich High School, to help with some of their student enrollment needs, would not have people in them by this point, so it wouldn't be a layoff. I would just have to recommend possibly that we not fill those positions, and then all of the other things that would happen with the domino effect there. And then you can see in each of these scenarios where, again, I'm not saying that any of these things would be set in stone, but where I might start would be, and I know you've probably had these conversations as a district before, elimination of the entire Cole athletic program. $100,000 reduction of East Greenwich High School athletics, in addition to district fund, those district funded extracurricular activities, which mostly fall on the music side. And then working all the way up, if we, for whatever reason, hit some doomsday scenario and we could not, meet, have expenses and revenues meet through any other means, and we had to lay off anyone, it would have to be from non-teaching personnel, because we would be past that June 1st deadline. Okay, so again, just so you know, this is not, you would not be voting in any of this tonight, obviously, right? We'll end on a happier note. You would be voting on this budget here, okay? But again, I just want you to have the full picture of what, where we would be after June 1st if something additional happened. Oh, sorry, and you're not voting until April 7th, that's right. Yes. Yeah, sorry. All right, but that is everything from me.
Does anybody on the committee have any further questions or comments for Maggie or Dr. Kenworthy about what we just saw?
Anybody want to see that again?
Yeah, Claire?
I just want to say thank you very much. It's all so concise and so simply presented that it's easy to lose sight of how much detailed work this is and how many difficult sort of like tiny decisions go into it. And so thank you very much. Nothing but respect for all of these things that you've done.
Yes, Jean?
I just wanted to add on what I said about the difference between budget and actual, the long-term average. The expected value is plus 400,000, so we tend to come out 400,000 more than budgeted. The standard deviation is also 400,000.
Just a quick question for Tom and then a quick question for Aubrey. So Tom, could you just talk for a minute about what's gained and lost with coordinators for student services versus the leadership role? I mean, is it what you lose in some managerial oversight you pick up with more,
Yeah.
close touch, operational on the ground? How does that work?
Yep. So I can tell you one of these districts is on here is the district where I was superintendent prior to this. So I worked in the coordinator, and that has coordinator. So I worked in the coordinator model, right? Again, a lot of districts end up in that position because they maybe have gone through searches for an assistant director, and sometimes the pool of candidates, isn't what was expected. But there is a healthy core of people within, the teaching ranks that can step up into those teacher leadership positions. So you definitely lose. It's not an administrative position. So again, I'm willing to make that sacrifice, if you will, because I've seen the coordinator model work effectively as well. But I do think we would need multiple, right? It's not. It wouldn't be a job for one coordinator. I think if we were down to just one individual in this case, we'd be better off staying with the assistant director position. I think minimum of 2 coordinators for us could start to see some positive improvements with our just overall operations and efficiencies on the student service side. And some of these districts where it's listed as having, you can see the larger ones have assistant director and coordinators. And when I say coordinators, it's multiple, and in most cases, it's not 2. It's even more than 2.
Thank you. And Aubrey, real quick, when Tom mentioned that, athletics and activities are part of the BEP, I think we all understand that. But is there anything you could tell us more? So, for instance, if you've been offering golf for 15 years, does that kind of get grandfathered into your BEP? Or could you just say, well, it's a question between, I'm using this illustratively, not to pick on golf, but, we have to decide between jazz band versus golf, or we have to decide between this and that. So who decides how much is in the BEP in terms of non-classroom activities, and how does it work?
So you couldn't decide we're going to do all jazz band and no athletics and vice versa.
Right.
There is a specific provision which it says each LEA shall provide a variety of physical activity opportunities to students in grades 6 through 12, such as stretch breaks, dance programs, or classes, intramural athletics, interscholastic athletics, or other activities.
Right.
So it's pretty broad. I don't think that it means if you've always funded golf, you have to fund golf, but it's clear that you need to be funding something.
Right.
It's a shall.
Right. And I've always been interested in this. Does it, there are a lot of things that aren't athletic, but involve, physical fitness. So for instance, if we had Pilates, if we had yoga, if we had, a bunch of other things too, are those part of the BEP?
Yeah, I think those would be part of the BEP and potentially fulfill this requirement, although, keeping in mind that it does say intramural athletics, interscholastic athletics. It's an or. So, and I think the other piece of this is, and it's less of a legal requirement, but does kind of pull into, our student support services that we have a lot of students who their reason why they go to school, or the reason why they, that's the carrot for them, that's where they're getting their, positive feedback at school. And so I know that that always factors into the kinds of decisions that the district makes in terms of funding athletics. And there's a legal component to that, because we do have, students who struggle with chronic truancy or absenteeism, students who, we're trying to get engaged in school from a student support services perspective, who benefit from those programs.
Thank you.
Also, there's also pretty good information that physical activity has positive effects on things like ADHD, like actually legitimate learning benefits, which really just speaks to like expanding access to sports. When we like make them bigger and more inclusive, they can have better effects for everyone.
Does anyone have any further questions or comments on this? Kevin?
Yep. Maggie, just to clarify on the $190,000 that it's the health insurance and dental rates are still above budget. Is that accounted for in the spreadsheets in here? Okay, I was thinking last time Dr. Kenworthy had said that that was not in the. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this slide, Mr. Wright, where did it go? Yeah, this updated slide of personnel now makes those adjustments based on my recommendations with the additional $350,000, but also trues up everything on the benefit side.
Okay, thank you.
So one more, Maggie. I'm not asking for this tonight, but since that athletics line item is big, somewhere there sits a breakdown, whether it's of, what goes to equipment, what goes to coaches, what goes to facilities rental, what goes to, video instruction, what goes to this, what goes to that. I mean, that's a big number. So is that broken down effectively so that we can see it? Because every time I look at that number, it's big.
Yeah. I mean, it's UCOA, it's a UCOA line item, supplies, equipment, whatever it is, transportation, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the backup to that.
Can I make my standard comment about UCO too? Tom, I'm glad you called it out earlier, that middle school and high school, high-quality curriculum is in the
High school, middle school.
the high school budget, right? Yeah, and that's a UCOA thing, I assume. That page could use an asterisk, aside from your other commendable presentation, which is crystal clear. But I just think it's, there's an apples to oranges thing when people look at what we're spending in an elementary school and what we're spending in a middle and high school. And curriculum is and should be, a huge component of that. It's just not clear from the numbers. But otherwise, this presentation, I just want to echo what Claire said, and I think what Jean said too. This presentation is so head and shoulders above what a lot of us have experienced over the years in terms of clarity and focus, providing options, walking everybody through it. I mean, it really is extremely helpful, and we really appreciate all the work that you and Maggie and Ozzy and Neil and everybody put into this. So thank you. It makes it a lot easier to have this session.
It's a team effort for sure, but thank you.
Any further comments or questions on the presentation or anything else? I'll just add my thanks and echo everything that's been said about the presentation. Being part of this process from the beginning, it has definitely been eye-opening and very appreciated. It makes it a much different experience sitting here and doing what we're all going to be asked to do next week. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone who's still hanging in there with us. I know a lot of you have reached out to us since the last budget workshop. I know we have people signed up for public comment, but I would just ask if we could indulge just a 5-minute break for the committee so we can maybe run to the bathroom, and then we'll be right back and we will go to the public comment portion on the budget. Okay? Thanks, everybody. Tim. Okay, thank you, everybody, for that break. So we're going to move on to comments on the budget presentation that we had tonight. So we have a few people signed up for public comment. I will go ahead and read them in order. If you could come up to the podium, state your name and address. And then when we're through that list, if there's anyone online or if anybody else is compelled to speak, we will do that. So the first name on our list is Mary Sullivan. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Mary Sullivan, and I live at 28 Prudence Court in Warwick. I'm just going to use my glasses so I can see. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am the preschool coordinator at Meadowbrook Farms School. I would just like to share some perspective about our preschool program and the proposed reduction to our preschool classroom and staffing. Our preschool program is often described as 3 classrooms, but in reality, it's much more than that. It is a comprehensive early childhood program that supports some of our district's youngest and most vulnerable learners. Our work includes identifying children through community outreach, supporting transitions from early intervention into the public school system, and evaluating children who may have developmental needs, and developing and implementing an individualized education program for those who qualify for services. Excuse me. Our program also relies on a multidisciplinary team. This team includes a speech therapist, occupational therapist, physical therapist, psychologist, special education teacher, and social worker, who are all standing with me tonight. Together, these professionals provide the specialized support that allows children to access the classroom and succeed. These professionals are not optional additions to the program, but they are essential to providing the services that many of our students require. When the appropriate supports are provided early, many children make significant progress and may not require the same level of support later in their school career. Early intervention within the school system truly matters. Another important consideration is that preschool program is not simply about numbers. It is about student needs. Some children require significant support, including one-to-one assistance, to participate successfully in the classroom setting. Something else that is worth noting, our preschool program also operates differently from other grade levels because we have a rolling admission throughout the school year. Children do not all begin in September. As children turn 3 and transition from early intervention, they become eligible for school-based services and enter our program at different points during the school year. Because of this, we never begin the school year at full classroom capacity. This is intentional and necessary. It is where if we were to start the school year with every classroom completely full, we would quickly exceed appropriate class sizes as new students enter the program. At that point, the district would need to open an additional classroom mid-year, which is far more difficult from both a staffing and budgeting perspective. Maintaining 3 full classrooms gives us the flexibility to support incoming students appropriately without overcrowding. Preschool is often a child's first school experience. It is where children learn that school is a safe place, where they develop relationships with adults and peers, and where they begin to build a love of learning. For many of our students, this is also the first time their developmental needs are identified and addressed. Our goal has always been to build classrooms where children feel safe, supported, and excited to come to school. We want families to feel confident that their children are receiving the care and instruction they need during these critical early years. I share these thoughts because our preschool team truly cares about our preschool program and, most importantly, the children and families we serve. Thank you for your time and for considering the impact these decisions may have on our youngest learners.
Thank you. Megan Pedraza.
Good evening. My name is Megan Pedraza. I live at 8 Fox Run in West Greenwich. I'm a preschool special educator here in East Greenwich, and I'm speaking tonight to advocate for the reinstatement of the .5 preschool special educator position. First, I want to acknowledge the difficult decisions you're facing. Balancing the fiscal needs of our schools is a significant task. I also want to salute my colleagues across all levels who work every day to prioritize and ensure a high-quality education for every East Greenwich student. Our district mission is to genuinely know, support, and celebrate all students in meeting their full potential. We are a community that lives by the mantra, all means all. However, we are currently at a critical point where fiscal decisions could compromise this very mission. The data from our 2023 special education audit and the demographic study reported at the school committee meeting on March 17th highlight 3 urgent reasons to maintain this preschool special educator position. First, responding to rapid growth. Based on the demographic study just presented on March 17th, the fastest growing population of children in East Greenwich are 0 to 5. This is our preschool population. To remain a high-quality education system for all, our staffing must reflect this reality. As educators, we know the value of early intervention. We cannot wait until these children and families reach kindergarten or beyond to provide the support they need today. Second, the special education audit found that Meadowbrook Farm serves the highest percentage of students with IEPs at the elementary level, 24%. This is largely due to our preschool program. Reducing staff in the face of this growth and need directly challenges our ability to genuinely know and support our youngest learners. Third, protecting foundational success. The audit celebrated that evidence-based practices like universal design and differentiation are strong at the elementary level. These successes are built on the foundation we lay in preschool. If we are under-resourced our earliest learners, we risk the all means all promise becoming an aspiration rather than a reality for our youngest students. I understand that every dollar in the budget counts. However, choosing to cut this position now, given the audit's recommendations and the forecast for a rapid growth in our 0 to 5 age population, would be a step away from our shared vision. By eliminating this position, we cannot ensure the appropriate access for our youngest learners and families. I ask you to honor the work of this position, the needs of our growing community, and the district's stated mission by reinstating the .5 preschool special educator. Thank you for your time and for your continued dedication to our students.
Thank you so much. Sadie Bursky.
I'm Sadie Bursky, 235 Putnam Pike in Chepachet. Good evening, Dr. Kenworthy and members of the school committee. Before I begin, Dr. Kenworthy, I want to thank you for the changes that you have made in your recommendations for tonight. My name is Sadie Bursky, and I am here today as a Meadowbrook teacher leader and member of committees, including our school improvement team and PBIS committee. Most importantly, I am proud to be here today as a second grade teacher. I want to begin by sharing an activity that I do with my second graders at the start of each school year to help them understand each of their importance in my classroom. We gather on the rug, which for 7-year-olds who they're getting back to school is always quite a thing. And I take the game Jenga out, which you probably are familiar with. We begin to build a tower out of the Jenga blocks, and as we build, we start talking about what each piece represents. I naturally guide the conversation to show each block representing a person in our class community. As we acknowledge the way that each student makes our class stronger, our tower grows taller. Once we have celebrated each member of the class, we begin to remove the pieces. With the first few blocks removed, the tower still stands. It wobbles a little bit, but it holds. But as we keep going, taking out more and more pieces, it becomes unstable and eventually it falls. That's what this moment has felt like in our schools. Last week, our superintendent, Dr. Kenworthy, was able to visit my classroom, which made for a very excited and honored group of second graders. It was also a great opportunity to teach them what doctor means outside of a medical standpoint. I appreciated the opportunity to share what a day in second grade looks like when all of the pieces are in place. I'm lucky to be a part of a team that truly supports students. When everything is in place, you see it in real time. Students working in small groups, getting the attention that they need, staying engaged, and feeling successful. You see smooth transitions, fewer disruptions, and more opportunities for every child to participate and grow. But what often goes unseen is everything happening behind the scenes to make that possible. The collaboration with resource teachers, OTs, SLPs, psychologists, and paraprofessionals, the planning, the extra hands that allow us to meet students where they are academically and emotionally, supporting them in the classroom. Those supports are not extras, they are essential pieces of the structure. Because the reality is, when we start removing staff who directly support students, we are not adjusting a budget, we are changing what the classroom experience looks like for the children. Without those supports, small groups become larger, individual attention becomes limited, students who need help regulating, catching up, or being challenged appropriately have fewer opportunities to get what they need, and the weight on the remaining staff increases, making it harder to sustain that level of support that we all can agree our students deserve. And just like that Jenga tower, it might not collapse right away, it might look like it's still standing, but it has become much more fragile with every piece that's been taken away. The students who feel this first are often the ones where that need is the most important, the ones who rely on consistency, connection, and individualized attention in order to succeed. When we remove those structural pieces, we are asking them to do more with less. I am asking you today to pass a version of this budget that protects the people who directly support students every day. These are not optional roles, they are foundational to student success. Every year, when my students do knock over that Jenga tower, one of them says, in a much cuter way than I'm going to say it, "We should have stopped sooner." I am asking you not to wait until our classrooms reach that point. We know what works, we've seen what happens when that structure is strong. Please help us keep all of the pieces in place so that our students and our schools can continue to stand. Thank you.
Next, we have our librarians, Beth Gorder, Michelle Seaver, and Kat Lynch.
Good evening. My name is Beth Gorder. I'm the library media specialist at Hannaford Elementary School, and I have dedicated the majority of my career to the students of East Greenwich. We are going to read our comments into the record because it's still unclear to us if the position is going to be funded for next year. We were told on the 17th that it was going to be funded out of fund balance, but now it looks like it's the first to be cut if cuts have to be made after June 1st. So the comments still stand. I'm here tonight because the students of East Greenwich need you to hear this. Eliminating or splitting a library position will cause them direct measurable harm. Research is unambiguous. Schools with full-time certified librarians have higher reading scores and stronger student engagement. But I don't need to cite a study to prove what happens in our libraries every single day. Teachers come to us mid-lesson when a student stumbles onto an unsanctioned website, and within minutes we can redirect them. I have students who are having a hard day come to the library for a quiet moment, and they leave steadier. Programs like Rooster Games, One Book, One School, and Reading Week do not run themselves. They exist because there is a full-time person whose job it is to know these students, to know this community, and to build something meaningful around a love of reading. I want to address something directly because I think it may be part, I know it's part, of the idea of splitting specials teachers. Splitting a specials teacher, whether it's art, music, or PE, is a scheduling solution. The resource travels with the teacher, but the library doesn't quite work that way. The librarian, the certified librarian, is the actual resource. The librarian is the one who troubleshoots the technology on the spot, who pulls the research materials, recommends the books, supports the lessons, and keeps the space running. When I'm at another building, none of that exists. The room doesn't become half a library. It becomes inaccessible. Covering minutes is not the same as covering a resource. I also want to name what this moment demands. We are living through the rise of artificial intelligence, a shift in our own student device policy, and an urgent need for children to think critically about the information that's in front of them. These are not future concerns. They're happening in our classrooms right now. Certified library media specialists are trained to teach exactly these skills. This is the worst possible time to reduce our capacity to do so. I also want to raise something that perhaps this committee may not have fully considered. We are approximately 1 year from closing a school and consolidating others. The library work that undertaking requires is enormous, and it cannot be done part-time. On the back end, every item in our catalog must have its MARC records updated. On the front end, we are talking about physically relabeling, packing, and relocating entire library collections of 6,000 to 10,000 items each. This is a specialized, skilled, time-intensive work that only a certified library media specialist will be able to do correctly. If you reduce this position now, you are not just cutting a service, you are guaranteeing that the consolidation process will be delayed, disorganized, or done incorrectly. The cost of fixing that later will far exceed whatever is saved today. I'm asking you directly to maintain a full-time librarian at all of our schools. This would require, as we've discussed, a 1-year-only position with limited impact on your budget. For the students who need us every day, and for the community that has built something worth protecting, and for the very real and very practical work that lies ahead.
Thank you.
My name is Kathleen Lynch. I live at 91 Aska Drive in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. I am going to speak to you tonight using words that Michelle Stever actually prepared. She was planning on speaking. Unfortunately, she had to leave due to the length of this meeting because we currently have a School Librarians of Rhode Island fundraiser going on in Providence right now that she had to wrap up. So she had to leave here to go do that. So she likes evidence-based information. So I'm going to read it to you. The correlation between robust school library programs and student achievement is exhaustively documented. Over the past 2 decades, longitudinal data has consistently demonstrated that elementary schools staffed by full-time certified librarians significantly outperform their peers on state standardized assessments. Martinez, 2024. Furthermore, comprehensive research indicates that these professionals are instrumental in driving literacy rates, graduation success, according to Coker, 2015, and college readiness through the targeted instruction of research methodology and digital citizenship, as pointed out by Library Research Service. Beyond academics, school libraries are vital to a student's social-emotional development. We provide a unique environment for independent inquiry, a safe, curated space where students can navigate stressful academic demands while fostering a genuine joy for learning, according to Hill, 2022. While the professional librarian is the catalyst, the collection itself is the tool. Access to a vetted, diverse array of digital and print resources is critical for reading attainment. When students are empowered to self-select materials that resonate with their interests, their intrinsic motivation, I love intrinsic motivation, their intrinsic motivation to read increases exponentially. Creation, 2004. Conversely, the consequences of staffing cuts are measurable. A nationwide study found that districts with librarian layoffs saw a direct correlation to lower performance or a stagnant growth rate on 4th grade reading scores, Lance and Hofshire, 2011. The ability to critically evaluate information is a prerequisite for success in higher education, trade schools, and civic life, according to Farmer and Flamelli, 2021. This impact follows our schools long after, not our schools, this follows our students long after they leave East Greenwich. A 2022 Rutgers study confirms that students who receive instruction from certified librarians enter university significantly better prepared for the rigors of academic research. Valenza et al., 2022. Information literacy is a cumulative skill set that must be built year over year. Without a full-time certified librarian in every building, our students lose the consistency required to master these competencies. Our children deserve the competitive advantage that media literacy provides, not just for the job market, but to function as informed, active citizens. Certified school librarians are more than just resource managers. We are efficiency experts, instructional collaborators, and a direct investment in the future of East Greenwich students. Thank you.
Thank you. And the last name on my list is Pat Rakovic.
Hi, I'm Pat Rakovic, 59 Wildwood Road, Narragansett, Rhode Island. I am a speech and language pathologist. I've 47 years as a national speech and language therapist. 28 of those have been in East Greenwich. Doing a job I absolutely love with children I love in a community that values education, and I appreciate that. On behalf of the Speech and Language Department, I would like to sincerely thank the superintendent and the school committee for your thoughtful decision to reinstate the speech and language therapist as part of your position in the budget. We truly appreciate you listening, and I know we probably flooded your mailboxes, but we wanted you to have an understanding of who we were and what we can do. So this decision has had a meaningful impact. Communication is the foundation of learning. It's where you learn speaking, listening, literacy skills, relationship skills. So it's an important factor in terms of what we're doing. Your support ensures that these opportunities remain accessible. As speech and language, one of the things we recognize that speech, you don't know what we do. That you might have a vision, the King's Speech or something. We're not isolated people. We're a team, and we work in the classrooms with classroom teachers. So what we would like to do is to invite you, not during budget time, but at some other time, to come and see what we do. We'd like to have like a little coffee hour to give you some idea of what our role is in the schools, because it's even though we have the same training as a clinical person, it's very different. So one of the things, as we're sitting here, I was reading this, and this is really probably the pledge that we would also say as rehab people. We believe we can make a difference in the life of our students. We recognize, respect, and value individual differences. We pledge our professional talents to educating all students so they will have the necessary skills to excel in their life endeavors. This we believe. So thank you for all your work, and thank you for reinstating the speech and language therapist.
Thank you so much, and I just want to say thank you personally, and I'm sure I speak for the rest of my colleagues at the table. Thank you so much for the emails that we received. Getting that kind of information and context is not something we always have available to us, and it is so very informative and helpful, not just in this process, but in all of the work that we do. And also, I think we all just enjoy being able to have a greater insight into what everybody does in all of these buildings every day. Definitely appreciate the invitation. I'm sure all of us would love the opportunity to come and see what everybody's doing all of the time, by invitation only, and with Dr. Kenworthy's permission, of course. But I know that is something school committee members don't usually get to do. It's not actually part of our job. In fact, I think a lot of school committee members are often discouraged from doing that. I don't feel like that's true here, but I did want to put that out there. If you don't see us as much as you would like to, shout out, because I know everybody at this table is here because we care about what you're doing, and we'd love to know more. And so anytime you want us to stop by, let us know. So thank you.
And if you see us, be reassured that we're there to celebrate and learn and not to like evaluate or be judgy or anything like that. We're happy to see you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to make a comment this evening who's in the audience? Do we have anyone online? Oh, we have one person. Yes, please, come on up.
Hi, I'm Audrey Cienko, 46 Old Mountain Road, Wakefield. I'm just a little confused around the coordinator positions, just hoping for a little more clarification or just to put these questions into the air. But I'm wondering if adding one single director position rather than the two coordinator positions would impact the need to lay off a tenured teacher. And I'm also wondering if the proposed coordinator positions require special education certifications that the displaced teachers would not hold because they're lower on the seniority list and they might not be able to fill those positions. So I'm just a little confused about how it all work out. I know a lot of things need to fall into place. And I also did want to say thank you that I do feel like this proposal is a lot better. So thank you.
So both coordinator positions have to happen in the way I've crafted the recommendations, again, because everything does kind of fall into place. So if we just went with an assistant director position, which we have a signed MOA that says that that's what would happen at the end of this school year, it would not create those other possible openings that would happen. So to fill the coordinator position, somebody would have to have a special education certificate at a minimum in order to be able to do that. I've randomly perused certifications even outside of our special ed ranks. Within our classroom teacher ranks, there are some classroom teachers who hold special ed certification. I do think, again, from experience that I've had with these, we would see a natural process that would play out where people would step up for those positions and it would create openings in other areas. So I am committing to that because, again, we would be after June 1st. So I would have to find a spot for whatever teachers are affected one way or another. So I'm making that clear.
Kat Felkner, 14 High Street, Ashaway. As Pat said, it's really hard to follow Pat. That's no lie. So I'll try to do my best. If it's tough to know what a speech-language pathologist in the school system does, it's even harder to wrap your head around what an OT does just anywhere in the world. So I won't even give a version of that right now, but would also like to extend the opportunity, and I won't speak on behalf of the whole department because I didn't check this with them, but I would be more than happy to have any of you come and spend a day, an hour, any amount of time with me during the school day. I would really welcome that opportunity. I have an incredible group of adults who I work with as well as kids. So there's that part, and I really appreciate you putting the 1.0 back in. It's crucial for our department and the integrity of what we do to have that. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to follow up on Audrey's question a little bit. I'm hearing what you're saying about, kind of like one of those puzzles where one thing shifts and others can move in and no pieces have to fall away. But I'm concerned on, I guess, two things. One, what if those people who hold the certification to move in those positions choose not to because they like where they are? Is it a matter of they'll have to take those positions so enough other positions stay open for less qualified, and I don't mean that out of disrespect. I just mean people who don't meet the requirement for the coordinator position. So that was one question of are people going to be forced into those so it maintains a job for everyone? And second, I'm just still, and it might be my issue, still not clearly understanding what those coordinators will do or even what the assistant director would do. And I was on the search committee twice for that, and I know it was something to be crafted when there was a person in place, but I understand you're saying it's going to make things more efficient, but I can't wrap my head around what that means. Is that a paperwork standpoint? Does that mean that there would ever be in services or working directly with kids or filling in if somebody's out, or, so I'm just trying to conceptualize that a little bit more about what the coordinators would do. Thank you.
So we would not force anybody into one of those coordinator positions. I'll start there. Again, I need a budget approved by the school committee first in order to kind of take the next steps. But one of the first things I would want to do once we get a school committee approved budget, if those positions are in there, we have to sit down and craft the job description. So we have plenty of samples to choose from, right? But Ms. Scarno, Mr. Marcarcio, myself, I assume would be at the table. We need to craft the job descriptions, and I think that would be a position that would fall into the criterion-based hiring process that we have for teacher leaders. So it wouldn't be something we'd ever want to force somebody into, even if they had the certification. Again, I think processes would play out that people would step up and open other positions. As far as what they would do, it's just I don't want to put Mr. Marcarcio on the spot, but whether you had an assistant director or coordinators, you could probably speak better to what those positions would help you with. Do you want to? Sure.
Turn my back to the people that asked the question either, so does that come out? I don't think I need this, actually. So, these coordinator positions... Okay, I'll use it. So these coordinator positions would be, I think, in many ways quasi-administrative. There would definitely be some building-level oversight and assistance with things like high-needs meetings and all of that stuff, but I see it as an opportunity to really build on some of the in-service stuff that we're already doing and to really develop that horizontal and vertical continuity that we are always striving for. And that's just not something I can do myself in this district. And there's a reason, I think, why all of the districts around us have those additional staff people. I see myself being able to pull back a little bit and do some of the more global planning and big picture stuff that we haven't gotten to. And I do think it's an opportunity in many cases to shift from a model where there's a lot of firefighting going on to like a fire prevention kind of role. So, that's where I see it going. I think I would value the input of the stakeholder groups in the district, our special services groups as well as our general education groups. I don't see these coordinators just sitting and chairing meetings. The original reason we looked at the assistant director position was, because I think there was a need for some more administrative, not oversight of staff, but to assist in moving through some of the complex situations that we face here in the district on a regular basis with families and staff and the interrelationships that are, spawned from that. So, some of it remains to be written, but I think, the vast majority of it would be to help build capacity. I also see a need for coaching our paraprofessionals. I see the coordinators doing a large part of that. We've been doing all the IEP microlearnings, and there's just not enough bandwidth to stay ahead of those things, but I think it's having an impact on everything that we do. The paperwork pieces are not glamorous, but they can drive a lot of the positive things that happen boots on the ground with kids. So that's where I see it going, but I would certainly, ask for input before we posted those job descriptions.
Said much better than I could, and I was also reminded to the fact that we would follow the criterion-based hiring process because they would be teacher leader positions, which would also come with a stipend. So that would be the incentive also for people to take the positions.
Okay. Does anyone have any further comments or questions, either on the committee, online, from the audience? Anyone? Going once? No? Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn. I can't see you, so you have to be loud. So moved by Jean, seconded by Kevin. All those in favor? Show of hands, please. Thank you. We are adjourned.